My brother-in-law kidnapped my autistic son, twice, trying to prove I was an unfit father. Then he dragged me to court, falsely accusing me of abuse. But when my son took the stand and told the truth in his own words, everything crashed down around my brother-in-law, and justice finally spoke for us both. When my son was 5, he expressed a profound desire to be like everyone else. This wasn't due to his feelings that day, but because my brother-in-law, Jared, had told him that ordinary boys didn't shed tears over fireworks. That instant shattered me. I understood that my overtly prejudiced in-laws were already instilling self-loathing in my son because of his unique nature. He was on the autism spectrum, highly functional, and intellectually gifted. Regrettably, this was never sufficient for those in our vicinity. His mother departed when he was 4, placing the blame squarely on him. She declared him flawed, so I instructed her to leave. Following her departure, her relatives began to intrude. Initially, it was unwanted counsel, then frequent visits. Subsequently, Jared, my former brother-in-law, who had once inadvertently abandoned my son at a service station, started appearing more often. You need to make him more resilient, Jared insisted. He must learn to stop complaining about minor issues like noise. That very week, he coaxed my son into his vehicle with the promise of ice cream, then left him at a park on 3 separate occasions, and reported me to Child Protective Services for neglect. Fortunately, the accusation didn't hold, but it instilled the idea in my in-laws' minds that I was an unsuitable parent. Soon after, my former wife's parents sought immediate custody. Yet, they didn't leverage the gas station or ice cream incidents to support their argument. Instead, they exploited my son's autistic traits to assert that I was abusive. For instance, they claimed his cries during a thunderstorm demonstrated my abuse. They also asserted that his biting appeared during a sensory overload episode proved I was encouraging aggression. It was inconsequential to them that my son adored me, that he would excitedly jump and embrace me upon my return from work. Their sole objective was to take him from me. Thus, they collected digital evidence, distorted the facts, and engaged a disreputable attorney who seemed to relish defending criminals. My only assets were my son and the unvarnished truth. When the day of the hearing arrived, I knew the court setting would be too much for him. So, I did what I always did. I got him ready. We went through court documents, viewed previous hearings, and rehearsed with his stuffed animals. I clarified the meaning of custody, taught him breathing techniques for when things got too loud, and ensured he understood my boundless love for him. Inside the courtroom, my in-laws sat with an air of self-satisfaction, Jared giving me a knowing wink as if victory was already theirs. Predictably, their lawyer portrayed me as neglectful. He asserted my son required strict discipline and even invented a falsehood about me physically harming him. It was a dreadful experience. When he concluded, the entire room seemed to view me as a villain. I glanced at my son, anticipating sadness or anxiety, but instead, he was visibly upset, as if he wouldn't tolerate anyone fabricating stories about his father. He was called to the stand, and just as we had practiced, he began to speak, though he initially deviated from our plan. Instead, he started to passionately refute the claims. That man is being dishonest. Never speak about my father that way again. He has never struck me. He cherishes me. When my mother hit me, he intervened. I love my dad immensely. He always ensures my peas don't mix with my mashed potatoes. He labels my bookshelves so I can locate every book. He never lies. The room fell silent. I know Article 3 of the Family Code, my son added. It states the court seeks what is best for me, and what is best for me is remaining with my father. My in-law's attorney attempted to object immediately, but the judge raised a hand. Let him finish. Dad doesn't make me feel peculiar, like they do, my son declared, pointing at Jared. He makes me feel ordinary, like I'm genuinely cool. I love him. I wiped my face. I hadn't shed a tear since my wife's departure. But that day, I couldn't stop weeping as I looked at my son. The judge ruled in our favor, granting me full custody. No visitation privileges were extended to the in-laws. Jared rose, his face flushed. This is a travesty. The bailiff approached him as he continued to shout, "You'll regret this. You think this is the end." They were escorted out. But as they passed, my former mother-in-law remarked, "You have no idea what you've unleashed." The truth was, I didn't. Yet, after securing that initial custody victory, I allowed myself to hope our lives might regain some semblance of normalcy, even if just for a brief period. My son and I gradually re-established a consistent routine, diligently addressing his sensory requirements and cultivating a secure, supportive home environment. Each day felt like progress. However, beneath that delicate calm, the menace from my former wife Maria's family loomed, a persistent shadow refusing to dissipate. Initially, Jared and my ex-in-laws maintained their distance, but their obedience was fleeting. Slowly, their familiar vehicles began to pass our residence more often, lingering just long enough to remind us of their surveillance. I attempted to shield my son from their presence, but his apprehension intensified whenever he caught sight of Jared's crimson truck near his school or at the recreational areas we frequented. My son's previously tranquil routines started to unravel under this deliberate intimidation. Then, Maria re-entered our lives, cautiously at first, heavily swayed by her parents. Her family exploited her guilt and vulnerabilities, persuading her that she had failed as a mother and needed to atone by regaining custody. Propelled by their coercion and yearning for their affirmation, she reluctantly submitted a new custody application. Her parents retained costly legal counsel and specialists, meticulously constructing a case designed to leverage my son's autistic characteristics against us. The harassment grew systematic. Jared orchestrated encounters meant to distress my son, appearing unexpectedly at shops or play areas. Every occurrence was precisely timed and recorded, transforming my son's genuine anxiety-driven responses into distorted evidence of neglect or emotional injury. Without my knowledge, Maria's family also secretly instigated problems at my son's school. They fostered misunderstandings, mischaracterized his sensory overloads, and amassed witnesses who supported their agenda. The more my son visibly struggled, the more leverage they acquired for court. As the custody hearing drew nearer, my sense of dread deepened. I collaborated closely with Dr. Chun, desperate to shield my son from escalating anxiety. But despite our meticulous preparations, I didn't fully comprehend the scope of Maria's family's machinations, nor did I realize that my son had initiated his own quiet defense. Prompted by Dr. Chun, he painstakingly documented the harassment, collecting his own proof, resolute in protecting our future. The subsequent custody hearing materialized far too swiftly. On the morning of the proceedings, I awoke before sunrise, the room still shrouded in darkness, my heart already pounding. Sleep had barely touched me, my mind consumed by worst-case possibilities. What if Maria swayed the judge? What if her parents' wealth secured superior legal representation? What if my son became paralyzed on the stand? I discovered him already awake, seated cross-legged on his bed, perusing his blue notebook. The gentle radiance of his nightlight cast shadows across his focused face as he reviewed his annotations. "I've structured my thoughts," he stated, without looking up. Red stars denote the most crucial information. I settled beside him, careful not to disrupt the meticulous arrangement of his blanket. The mattress yielded slightly under my weight, and he subtly shifted to maintain equilibrium. "That's incredibly clever, little man." "I know," he affirmed matter-of-factly. I also filled my backpack with precisely 7 books, just in case we face a delay. My throat constricted. He had endured this ordeal previously. The waiting, the strain, the unfamiliar adults posing intrusive inquiries. No child should possess such readiness for a court appearance. We arrived ahead of schedule. Patrick, my legal counsel, met us in the corridor. His demeanor was somber, his tie slightly askew, and I detected the scent of coffee on his breath as he leaned in to whisper. "They're all present," he cautioned quietly. "Maria, her parents, Jared, and they've brought additional support. Character witnesses and a child psychologist." My stomach plummeted. "A psychologist my son has never even encountered?" Patrick nodded. "They assert he doesn't require a direct meeting, that they can evaluate the situation based on the documented evidence of emotional distress they've compiled." "What evidence?" I demanded, my tone sharper than intended. A passing court clerk briefly glanced in our direction, and I lowered my voice. "The school incidents, your son's apprehension, they're portraying it as a consequence of your parenting, not their harassment." I felt nauseated. They had engineered the predicament, and now they were weaponizing it against us. Within the courtroom, Maria occupied the plaintiff's table, appearing refined and motherly in a simple blue gown. Her hair was shorter than I recalled, styled to convey a more mature, responsible image. Beside her sat her parents, and next to them, Jared, who made no effort to conceal his smug expression upon seeing us. The wooden benches groaned as we settled into our seats, the sound reverberating through the high-ceilinged chamber. The judge, a severe-looking woman named Judge Patel, declared the court in session. The sharp rap of her gavel caused my son to wince slightly, his fingers clenching his notebook. Maria's lawyer, a smooth individual named Turner, presented their argument first. His footwear clicked against the gleaming floor as he approached the bench, each stride purposeful and self-assured. "Your Honor, my client has made errors," he commenced. "She departed from her child during a challenging period. She admits this, but she has dedicated the past year to reconstructing her life, participating in parenting courses, and preparing to be the mother her son merits." I observed my son, who was sketching geometric designs in his notebook. His expression was inscrutable. His pencil moved with exact, measured strokes, forming flawless squares and triangles. Furthermore, Turner proceeded, we possess proof that the child is experiencing emotional distress in his present surroundings. The father has isolated him, fostering an unhealthy reliance. The child displays intense apprehension, struggles in social settings, and has shown developmental regression in recent months. My hands tightened into fists beneath the table. They were weaponizing my son's autism against us, portraying his inherent behaviors as indicators of my inadequacy. Patrick then rose. Your Honor, Mr. Turner's assertions are not merely inaccurate, but intentionally deceptive. My client's son received a diagnosis of high-functioning autism at 3 years old. His conduct aligns with his diagnosis and has been suitably managed through therapy and steady parental guidance. He presented documents from Dr. Chen outlining my son's advancement over the years, the methods we had employed, the achievements he had attained. The papers audibly rustled as he passed them to the clerk. Furthermore, Patrick continued, the recent decline in behavior precisely aligns with the campaign of intimidation orchestrated by the maternal grandparents and uncle subsequent to their unsuccessful custody bid. He displayed my evidence, the dates, times, and images of their vehicles outside our residence, at the school, and tailing us to shops. The photographs depicted Jared's recognizable red truck parked opposite our house at unusual hours, my former in-law positioned at the periphery of the school playground during break time. This is not about a mother desiring to re-establish a bond with her child, Patrick concluded. This is about dominance, and the individual suffering most is the child they purport to care for. Judge Patel listened attentively, occasionally jotting notes. Her pen scraped against the paper, the sound almost imperceptible in the hushed courtroom. Once both parties had presented their opening statements, she addressed my son. Young man, would you like to address the court today? She inquired softly. My son lifted his gaze from his notebook, his eyes flitting around the courtroom before resting on the judge. He nodded and proceeded to the witness stand, his blue notebook held tightly against his chest. His shoes made soft padding sounds on the carpet as he approached. I brought my observations, he stated, his voice quiet but distinct, so I don't overlook crucial details. Judge Patel offered a smile. That is very diligent. Please proceed at your own pace. My son opened his notebook to a page highlighted with red stars. The paper crinkled as he smoothed it flat with his palm. First point. My mother departed when I was 4 years, 2 months, and 15 days old. She declared me flawed. Maria visibly winced, her manicured fingers digging into her palms, leaving faint indentations. Second point. She never contacted me. Not for my birthday, not for Christmas. Never. He turned the page, the sound seeming to reverberate in the silent courtroom. Third point. Dad never spoke ill of her. He said she wasn't prepared to be a mother, that it wasn't my fault. He continued systematically, detailing the recent harassment, the nightmares, the apprehension he felt when unfamiliar vehicles trailed us. He described how his grandfather and Uncle Jared would appear at his school and watch him through the fence during recess. His voice remained steady, but I could see his free hand clutching the edge of the witness stand, knuckles white with strain. It makes my mind feel like a swarm of agitated insects, he explained. I can't concentrate, I can't breathe properly. I have to conceal myself beneath my desk. Then he turned to a page featuring a drawing, a simple sketch of a house with a sun above it. The lines were straight and precise, drawn with a ruler. This is what I desire, a peaceful dwelling where no one spies on us, where I can read my books and Dad can assist me with my science projects, and no one says I'm broken. Maria's attorney rose. Your Honor, while this is deeply moving, the child has clearly been coached. I am not coached, my son interjected, his voice suddenly sharp. I observe. I analyze. I conclude. He tapped his notebook. That is how my brain operates. Judge Patel raised a hand to silence Turner. Continue, young man. My son took a deep breath. I could see his chest rising and falling as he composed himself. Final point. Yesterday, Uncle Jared came to our house. My head snapped up. What? I hadn't known this. A chilling sensation spread through my chest. He believed I was at school, but I had a stomach ache, so Dad permitted me to stay home. I was in my room when Uncle Jared approached the back door. He was conversing with someone on his phone. He stated, once we secure the child, we'll ensure he never sees his father again. Maria just needs to fulfill her role for a few more days. The courtroom erupted. Maria's face turned ashen. Her parents exchanged panicked glances. Jared stood, pointing at my son. The sudden scrape of his chair against the floor produced a harsh sound that echoed through the room. He's fabricating. I never. Be seated, sir, Judge Patel commanded, her voice like steel. Young man, are you certain about what you overheard? My son nodded solemnly. I recorded it. He produced a small voice recorder from his pocket. The one Dr. Chun had suggested he used to capture his thoughts when writing proved too difficult. The plastic device appeared minuscule in his hand. Dad says evidence is important, so I gathered evidence. Patrick quickly approached, took the recorder, and handed it to the bailiff, who then passed it to Judge Patel. She listened to it privately through headphones, her expression darkening. After a tense silence, she removed the headphones. The soft click as she set them down seemed unnaturally loud. This court will take a 30-minute recess. Counsel for both parties, in my chambers now. As they filed out, Maria turned to look at me, her eyes wide with what appeared to be genuine astonishment. Had she truly been unaware of her brother's scheme, or was she simply a more skilled actress than I remembered? The door to the judge's chambers closed with a heavy thud. My son returned to our table, his shoulders slumped with fatigue. His face seemed paler than usual, with tiny beads of perspiration at his hairline. You were incredible, I whispered, drawing him into a gentle side hug, careful not to overwhelm him. Why didn't you inform me about Jared visiting the house? I was collecting data, he replied simply. Dr. Chun says sometimes you have to observe before you intervene. I couldn't help but smile. My brilliant, meticulous son. When the court reconvened, Judge Patel's demeanor was solemn. The wooden gavel rested heavily in her hand as she called the session back to order. Based on the new evidence and testimony presented today, I am issuing an immediate and expanded restraining order against Jared Wilson, forbidding him from approaching within 500 feet of this child or his father. She then addressed Maria. Miss Wilson, this court is profoundly disturbed by the recording we have heard. While you may not have been directly involved in your brother's apparent scheme, your custody petition appears to be part of a larger plan orchestrated by your family. Maria's face crumpled. Your Honor, I was unaware. Save it for your testimony, Judge Patel interrupted. This court will reconvene tomorrow morning to hear final arguments and issue a ruling. In the interim, I am ordering a full investigation into the harassment described by the minor and his father. As we departed the courtroom, I felt a burden lift from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I dared to hope we might actually escape this ordeal. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the courthouse windows, casting elongated shadows across the marble floor. That optimism was fleeting. As we walked toward our vehicle, Maria appeared, hurrying across the parking area toward us. Her heels clicked rapidly on the asphalt as she drew near. I instinctively positioned myself in front of my son. Wait, she called. Please, just a moment. Patrick, who was accompanying us, moved to intercept her. My client has a restraining order. Against my family, not me, she quickly stated. Please, I need to explain. I hesitated, then nodded to Patrick. It's all right. We'll listen to her. My son pressed against my side, his body tense. I kept my hand on his shoulder, reassuring him. I could feel his rapid heartbeat through his thin jacket. Maria stopped a few feet away, her eyes reddened. I didn't know what they were planning. I swear. They told me they just wanted to help me reconnect with my son, that you've been keeping him from me. You left, I reminded her, maintaining a steady tone. You called our son flawed and walked out. You never called, never wrote. I know, she looked down. I was young, self-centered, and frightened. I couldn't cope, but they made it sound as though you'd turned him against me, that you wouldn't permit me to see him even if I tried. Did you ever try? I inquired. She didn't respond. That was sufficient answer. The wind rustled through nearby trees, filling the uncomfortable silence. They're obsessed, she continued. My parents, Jared, they cannot tolerate that you're raising him without their influence. When the first custody case failed, they approached me, offering to finance everything if I would file for custody. My son tugged at my sleeve. Dad, I want to go home. In a moment, buddy, I said softly, then turned back to Maria. Why are you disclosing this now? Because I heard the recording, what Jared said. Her voice broke. They never intended for me to be his mother. They merely wanted to use me to gain access to him. I scrutinized her face, attempting to discern if this was just another manipulation. What do you desire, Maria? I wish to withdraw my petition, she stated. And I want to apologize to both of you. She looked at our son, who was partially concealed behind me. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to be your mom. My son peered around me, his eyes narrowing in evaluation. Are you still afraid of me? He asked bluntly. Maria blinked, taken aback by the directness of the inquiry. I was never afraid of you, she said after a moment. I was afraid of failing you. There's a distinction. He considered this, then nodded once. All right. Apology accepted. Can we go home now, Dad? I couldn't help but smile at his straightforward response. Yes, buddy. We can go home. As we turned to depart, Maria called after us. They won't relent. You know my parents, Jared. He'll discover another method. I looked back at her. I know. That's precisely why we're leaving. That evening, as I settled my son into bed, he posed a question I had been anticipating. Where will we relocate? I sat on the edge of his bed. The mattress softly creaked beneath me, and the bedside lamp cast a gentle radiance across his anxious face. I'm not certain yet. Somewhere tranquil. Somewhere with excellent educational institutions. Somewhere they cannot easily locate us. He furrowed his brow, processing this. But what about Ms. Quinn and Dr. Chun? And my library card has 12 more stamps before I earn a complimentary book? My heart ached. Relocating meant abandoning the few consistent elements in his life. His teacher who comprehended him, his therapist who had guided him through his emotions, the routines we had meticulously established. We'll find a new teacher, I assured him, and a new therapist and a new library. It might require some time to adapt, but we will navigate it together. Okay. He didn't appear convinced. May I bring my bookshelf labels? Of course. And my solar system model? Absolutely. He pondered for a moment. Will they have the correct type of peas? The small ones, not the large, soft ones. I smiled. If they don't, we'll order them online. This seemed to appease him. He retrieved his blue notebook from beneath his pillow and jotted something down before closing it. The pencil softly scratched against the paper. What did you write? I inquired. A hypothesis, he responded. I believe we will be fine if we remain united. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. That's not a hypothesis, little man. That's a certainty. The following morning, we returned to the courthouse. The ambience was altered, more strained, more subdued. Maria sat alone at her table. Her parents and Jared were conspicuously absent. The vacant chairs beside her seemed to underscore her solitude. Judge Patel called the court to order. Before we commence, I have been informed that Miss Wilson wishes to address the court. Maria rose, her hands trembling slightly. Your Honor, I desire to retract my custody petition. I have come to realize that my son's best interests are served by remaining with his father, who has provided him with consistency, comprehension, and boundless affection, qualities I failed to offer him. Judge Patel raised an eyebrow. Are you making this declaration of your own free will, Miss Wilson? Yes, Your Honor. After hearing my brother's recorded statement yesterday, I understood I was being utilized as a pawn in my family's vendetta against my former husband. I wish no involvement in it. The judge observed her for a moment, then nodded. Petition withdrawn. Now, regarding the expanded restraining order and harassment allegations. What ensued was an extensive ruling that surpassed even my most hopeful expectations. Judge Patel issued a perpetual restraining order against Maria's entire family, including any individuals acting on their behalf. She mandated a criminal inquiry into Jared's attempted parental abduction plot, and she approved my request to move with my son without revealing our new location. This court determines that the respondents have engaged in a pattern of harassment and manipulation that poses a clear danger to the child's welfare, she concluded. The father has exhibited exemplary parenting under exceedingly challenging circumstances. He has my complete endorsement in pursuing any necessary legal actions to safeguard his son. As we exited the courtroom for the final time, I experienced a peculiar blend of emotions, relief, justification, but also a tinge of sorrow. This place had been our abode. Despite everything, we had established a life here. Patrick shook my hand. Congratulations. This is as complete a triumph as I have ever witnessed. Thank you for everything, I stated genuinely. Where will you go? He inquired. I shook my head. It's better if you don't know. The fewer people who are aware, the safer we'll be. He nodded in understanding. Stay in touch. Let me know if you require anything. In the parking area, we passed Maria standing alone by her car. Our gazes briefly met. She offered a small, melancholic nod. I returned it. There was nothing more to communicate. That weekend, we began packing our crucial possessions. My son approached the task with his characteristic systematic exactitude, categorizing his books, meticulously wrapping his scientific models, and compiling lists of contents for each box. The distinct sound of packing tape unspooling became the constant background noise of our days. Dad, he called from his room. Can we visit the library one last time to bid farewell to Ms. Eden? Ms. Eden was the children's librarian who consistently reserved new astronomy books for him. She had been among the rare individuals who never made him feel out of place. Certainly, buddy. At the library, Ms. Eden struggled to hold back tears as my son gravely returned his partially stamped card. The card was frayed at the edges, bearing 11 meticulously inked stamps shaped like open books. I require 12 more stamps for a complimentary book, he explained, but we are relocating for our security. Ms. Eden vanished into the back room and reappeared with a pristine copy of the Ultimate Space Encyclopedia. Its glossy cover shimmered beneath the library lights. "Consider this your free book," she said, handing it to him. "You have been my most devoted reader." My son's eyes widened. "But I don't possess enough stamps." "Some things transcend stamps," she responded with a smile. "Promise me you will discover an excellent library wherever you settle." He nodded earnestly. "I promise. Libraries are vital repositories of human understanding." She chuckled. "Indeed, they are." Our final stop was Dr. Chen's office. She had consented to meet us on Sunday, her day off, to say goodbye and provide recommendations for trusted colleagues in various cities, ensuring no one would ascertain our true destination. The familiar aroma of her office, a blend of tea and aged books, was reassuring. "Recall what we have practiced," she instructed my son. "When you feel overwhelmed, pinpoint the catalyst. Employ a coping mechanism. Articulate your requirements," he recited. She smiled. "Precisely. And remember, change is challenging for everyone, not just you. It is acceptable to feel apprehension, anger, or sadness about moving." He considered this. "I am experiencing all of those emotions, but I am also eager about our new residence." Dr. Chen looked at me. "He will be fine. Both of you will." On the morning of our departure, I awoke before sunrise. Our loaded SUV waited in the driveway, prepared for the extensive journey ahead. The neighborhood was hushed, broken only by the occasional chirping of early birds. I performed a final inspection of the house, ensuring we hadn't overlooked anything. In my son's room, I discovered a sheet of paper affixed to the wall, a precise drawing of our house with two stick figures positioned outside. Beneath it, in his neat handwriting, were the words, "Our initial home where Dad showed me I am not flawed." I carefully detached it and placed it in my wallet. The paper softly crinkled as I folded it. My son was already in the vehicle when I emerged, his blue notebook open on his lap, a fresh page titled Our Expedition. The morning air was cool and humid, with mist lingering between the houses. "Prepared?" I inquired, sliding into the driver's seat. He glanced back at the house and then at me. "Prepared. Let's go somewhere they cannot locate us." As we drove off, I checked the rearview mirror, half anticipating a silver sedan or Jared's truck trailing us. But the street was deserted, bathed in the gentle illumination of dawn. We were liberated for the moment, yet I couldn't shake the conviction that this ordeal was not truly concluded. Maria's words resonated in my thoughts. They won't cease. Individuals like her family do not simply relinquish their pursuits. I understood that all too well, which is why I had one additional stop planned before we definitively left town, a stop my son was unaware of. A safeguard I hoped we would never require, but one I could not afford to omit. Because when it concerned safeguarding my son, I was no longer taking any risks. Our final destination was a modest, unmarked office structure on the town's periphery. I informed my son we needed to collect some specific travel papers, which was not entirely untrue. The building appeared unremarkable, gray concrete with tinted panes that mirrored the morning light. "Wait here for just a moment," I instructed, leaving him in the car with his new space encyclopedia. "I'll be swift." Inside, a woman with closely cropped gray hair and keen eyes greeted me. This was Diane, a former police investigator, now a private security advisor. Patrick had introduced us. Her office carried the scent of coffee and paper, with filing cabinets lining the walls. "Everything is prepared," she stated, handing me a sealed envelope. "New driver's license, social security card, bank accounts, the complete package. Your new identity is as robust as I can make it. Background, credit history, employment records. Your son's academic files have been transferred under the fresh name." I nodded, my throat constricted. "And the surveillance is already established. We will monitor any inquiries for your former names, any unusual occurrences involving your previous contacts. If they begin to draw near, you will be alerted before they are." Back in the vehicle, my son scarcely lifted his gaze from his book. The pages rustled as he turned them, engrossed in depictions of distant galaxies. "Did you obtain the documents?" he inquired without looking up. "All sorted," I replied, slipping the envelope into my jacket. "Ready for our grand journey?" He nodded, but his eyes lingered on the town receding outside his window. Structures and notable places we had known for years passed by, diminishing in the side mirror. "I calculated that we have resided in this house for 2,347 days, he stated quietly. "That is a considerable number of days." "Indeed," I concurred. "But we will experience even more days in our new dwelling. Will it feature a backyard for my telescope?" "Even superior," I promised. "It possesses a rooftop deck, ideal for celestial observation." That seemed to lift his spirits. As we merged onto the highway, I felt the strain in my shoulders begin to dissipate. The further we moved from our past existence, the greater our security would be. We journeyed for numerous hours, pausing solely for restroom visits and to stretch our limbs. My son meticulously recorded everything in his blue notebook. The license plates from various states we observed, the different cloud formations in the sky, the precise distances between rest areas. The gentle scratching of his pencil became a soothing background sound to the engine's drone. "Dad," he inquired, approximately 6 hours into our drive, "are we going to alter our names, similar to what happens in witness protection programs?" I nearly veered. "Have you been watching those programs again?" He shrugged. "Occasionally, when you're preparing dinner, they are quite engaging. Very systematic." I sighed. There was no point in concealing it. He would soon deduce the truth. "Yes, we are changing our names, just our surname, not our given names. It's to make it more challenging for certain individuals to locate us." He considered this. "Like Grandpa and Uncle Jared?" "Precisely like them." "Good." He returned to his notebook, adding an item to a list. "I've been contemplating last names. I favor Chun, like Dr. Chun, or Quinn, like Ms. Quinn, or perhaps something related to space, such as Armstrong or Hubble." I smiled. "The new name has already been chosen, little man, but I appreciate your suggestions." "What is it?" he asked eagerly. "Walker," I stated. "We are going to be the Walkers." He tried it out. "Walker. Walker." Then he nodded. "It sounds as though we are perpetually in motion. That is beneficial for concealment." "Exactly," I agreed, relieved. He approved. We arrived at our destination late that night. A modest city in a different state, sufficiently distant to feel secure, yet not so isolated that we would appear conspicuous as newcomers. I had leased a furnished apartment as a temporary residence while we searched for a permanent home. The apartment was compact but tidy, with 2 bedrooms and, as promised, access to the roof. The building was older, with creaking floorboards and clanking radiators, but it felt safe. My son immediately claimed the smaller bedroom, which featured built-in bookshelves. He ran his fingers along the empty shelves, already envisioning his book arrangement. "This is acceptable," he declared after a thorough inspection. "The shelves will require labels, though." "We'll attend to that tomorrow," I promised, exhaustion washing over me. "For now, let's just get some rest." That initial night in our new dwelling, I barely slept. Every unfamiliar sound roused me. The refrigerator's hum, the heating system's creaks, the distant sirens of a city I had yet to know. The shadows on the walls seemed to shift and undulate in the unfamiliar darkness. I repeatedly checked my phone, half expecting a message from Diane warning that they had somehow already traced us. But morning arrived without incident, and then another and another. We established a routine. I secured a remote technical writing position, with flexible hours that allowed me to be present for my son. We found a new therapist, Dr. Ramirez, who specialized in autism and trauma. The local school offered an excellent special education program, with educators trained to manage sensory challenges. Slowly, cautiously, we began to construct a life. My son adapted better than I had anticipated. He meticulously mapped out the new neighborhood, identifying the optimal routes to the library, the park, and the science museum. He created detailed diagrams of traffic patterns and noise levels at various times of day. He befriended a quiet girl named Zoe, who shared his interest in astronomy and didn't mind his need for precise articulation. "Zoe says I speak like a professor," he informed me one evening, sounding pleased. "She says it's cool." "It is cool," I agreed. "You are cool." He rolled his eyes, but I caught his faint smile. 3 months into our new existence, I received the first alert from Diane. Jared had been making inquiries about us in our old town, questioning my former colleagues and the parents of my son's old classmates. But the trail was cold. We had been careful to leave no forwarding address, no clues about our destination. A month later, another alert. Maria's parents had hired a private investigator. The PI had tracked us as far as the state line before losing our trail. Each alert sent my anxiety spiraling, but each time, our safeguards held. Our new identities remained secure. We were now phantoms to them. 6 months after our relocation, we discovered a permanent residence, a small house with a fenced backyard and, as promised, a rooftop deck ideal for stargazing. The house required renovation, peeling paint, an outdated kitchen, squeaky floorboards, but it was ours, a fresh beginning. The day we moved in, my son meticulously arranged his books on the built-in shelves, applying new labels with his precise handwriting. Each book occupied its exact spot, organized by subject and then alphabetically. "Dad," he said that night as we sat on the roof, his telescope aimed at Jupiter, "I believe our hypothesis was correct." "Which hypothesis is that?" I inquired, watching as he adjusted the focus knob with practiced fingers. that we would be fine if we remained united. He adjusted the focus on his telescope. The evidence supports it. I smiled. I think you were right. Life was not flawless. My son still experienced meltdowns occasionally, such as when the school fire alarm unexpectedly sounded during a test, or when the grocery store reconfigured the cereal aisle. He still suffered nightmares about being taken away. I still sometimes woke in a cold sweat, convinced I had heard Jared's truck in the driveway, but those moments grew less frequent. The positive days outnumbered the challenging ones. A year after our relocation, I received a message from Patrick. Jared had been apprehended, not for anything connected to us, but for financial deception. He had been operating some form of investment scheme, and one of his victims had pressed charges. He was facing a substantial prison sentence. One less concern, Patrick wrote. Thought you'd wish to be informed. I did not share this news with my son. I did not wish to reopen old wounds, but I slept a little more peacefully that night. 2 years into our new existence, we received an unforeseen package, forwarded through Patrick's office, the sole individual aware of our new address. Inside was a letter from Maria. I read it alone first, bracing myself for threats or demands. The paper was costly, bearing the faint aroma of the perfume she once wore. Instead, I discovered an apology, more extensive, more detailed, and seemingly more genuine than the one she had offered in the courthouse parking lot. She wrote about undergoing therapy, about confronting her parents regarding their manipulation, about the culpability she carried for abandoning her son. She did not request to see him or even to know our whereabouts. She simply wished for us to know she was truly sorry and that she hoped we were content and secure. Enclosed with the letter was a small blue container holding a meteorite fragment, a bona fide piece of space rock with accompanying authentication papers. I recalled he cherished space, she wrote. Perhaps someday he will desire this. If not, I comprehend. I deliberated whether to show any of this to my son. He was flourishing, excelling in school, forming friendships, pursuing his interests with the same fervor but less apprehension. Why risk disturbing that? But he deserved to make his own decisions about his relationship with his mother, however limited it might be. That evening, I presented him with the letter and the meteorite. He read the letter carefully, his expression inscrutable. Then he examined the meteorite, turning it over in his hands. The rock was dark and dense, with subtle patterns visible on its surface. It's a chondrite, he finally stated. Likely from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Very ancient, billions of years. What do you wish to do with it? I inquired. He contemplated for a moment. I want to keep it for my collection. He placed it carefully on his desk beside his other celestial treasures. But I do not wish to reply yet. That is perfectly acceptable, I assured him. You do not have to decide anything now. He nodded, then asked, is she still with Grandpa and Uncle Jared? No, I said truthfully. She says she is no longer communicating with them. Good. He returned to the homework he had been doing. Perhaps someday I will write to her when I am older, to ask questions about space rocks. Whenever you are ready, I said. No rush. 3 years subsequent to our escape, we received news that my former mother-in-law had passed away. The information once again came through Patrick, who had maintained a distant watch on the family for us. The email was concise but contained all the vital details. A heart attack, he reported. The grandmother had relocated to a retirement community in Florida. Jared remained incarcerated. Maria was residing in another state, employed as a teacher's aide. The menace that had hung over us for such an extended period was finally, truly gone. That night, I discovered my son seated on the roof deck, his telescope aimed at the stars, his blue notebook open beside him. The night was crisp and cool, with stars scattered across the dark sky like scattered jewels. Dad, he stated, without diverting his gaze from the eyepiece, I've been contemplating our old house. I settled beside him. What about it? I can't recall its appearance anymore. Not precisely. He sounded troubled by this. I attempted to visualize it, but the specifics are indistinct. That happens, I said gently. Memories can fade. He turned to look at me. But I don't wish to forget everything. Some things are important to retain. I reached into my wallet and retrieved the drawing he had made on the day we left. The image of our old house with the 2 stick figures and the inscription. Our initial home, where Dad taught me, I am not flawed. The paper was creased from being folded, but the drawing remained clear. His eyes widened. You kept it? Of course I did. I handed it to him. Some things are worth cherishing. He examined the drawing, tracing the lines with his finger. Can we place this in a frame for my room? Absolutely. He carefully positioned the drawing in his notebook, then returned to his telescope. After a moment, he said, I'm pleased we moved here. Me too, little man. Even though it was frightening at first, even though we had to change our names and abandon everything, it was worthwhile. He adjusted the focus on his telescope. I gazed up at the immense expanse of stars above us, the same stars we had observed from our old backyard, but somehow brighter here, clearer. It was undeniably worthwhile. Later that night, as I was tucking him in, a ritual he claimed to be too old for but still seemed to appreciate, he inquired, "Dad, do you think we will ever have to flee again?" I shook my head. "No, buddy. We are secure now. This is our home." "Good," he said, pulling his blanket up to his chin. "Because I enjoy it here. I like being a walker." "Me too," I said, smiling. As I turned to leave, he added, "Dad, one more thing." "What's that?" "Thank you for not surrendering, for fighting for us." My throat tightened. "Always, buddy. Always." 5 years after departing from our former life, we commemorated with a camping excursion to a dark sky sanctuary, a location devoid of light contamination where the stars gleamed with astonishing brilliance. My son, now 10, erected his telescope with practiced facility, consulting his celestial charts and making annotations in the most recent iteration of his blue notebook. As we sat by the campfire that evening, he abruptly inquired, "Do you ever long for our previous life?" I pondered the question. I miss certain aspects, certain individuals, but I do not miss the apprehension. He nodded reflectively. "I used to be constantly fearful. I didn't even recognize it until we relocated, and that feeling subsided." "And how do you feel now?" I asked. He gazed up at the stars, his face illuminated by the firelight. "Secure," he stated simply, "and whole, never flawed." I placed my arm around his shoulders, and for once, he did not withdraw. "That is all I ever desired for you." We sat in comfortable silence, observing the embers of the fire dance like faraway stars. The past could no longer reach us. We had outpaced it, outlasted it, outgrown it.